Hello, I'm Pauline Sewards. Patrick has very kindly asked me to be a featured poet for Dodo Online 7, and I'm really thrilled to do this. I've got happy memories of attending Dodo in the Poetry Cafe and in the pub in Fitzrovia. But today I'm reading from my room in a room in my house in Bristol. There's some crows in the background and you might hear a cat. Okay, so I'm going to start with 3 poems that Patrick said that he enjoyed. They're poems that I wrote in response to events that happened in my life, observed events about other people, and mostly in my life, and things that I'd read in the paper, and they just seemed to kind of keep repeating in relevance, although I wrote them quite a long time ago. Okay, the first one. Interview at the DWP. Police have more manners than these women who, with their thin lips and delicate lockets, are guardians of the nation's purse. They are strangers to pity, manglers of language, spit dry words in a parody of trial after fussing with the double tape recorder, which is alleged to make everything fair. They trick with their trip-up questions, probe for perfect recall of dates and actions, an interrogation of self-righteous proportions based on a neighbour's spite. I see a proud man disintegrate, feel his whiskey thirst, his rising shame on seeing played back to him like a dirty secret, a walk without crutches, shown Crime Watch style, each step highlighted with a laser pointer. No film of the courage it took to attempt this, or the pain he felt for days afterwards. He is called on to account for himself by the Jobsworth judge and jury. I bear witness, my mouth buttoned up by protocol, want to howl for the right to be human. So I think I haven't put a full explanation of this, but I think unfortunately there is a lot more kind of observation of what other people are doing and kind of sneaking on people. I've changed some of the details, but this was actually about having to go with somebody into one of these interviews. The next one is called Betrayal, and I kind of think of it, I've got another title for it in my head, which is actually the last line. So I'll just read it without any ado. Betrayal. His name was second-hand, a trusty badge, sequestered from old records, 1960s vintage baby, born blue and laid to rest beside a Woolworths teddy bear. He stepped into that dead boy's shoes, swelled over years from cute booties to size 12 docks. He carried the red mud of peace camps on his soles when he strode out, one hand on a banner, the other rifling through her hair, her clothes, her cervix, her marrow, and her very soul. She fell for his favours, his ever-ready van, and cultured cultural signifiers, diet, music, anti-fashion, slogan, speak, persona, hip, vernacular. With disbelief, she heard her diary verbatim, quoted in court. Her days turned against her, turned inside and outside, like a turned-out glove, fingered by the ultimate deception, the intimate deception of the undercover cop. So actually, there's a whole podcast on that matter, which is very messy and probably continues, who knows. So the next one, also a poem that Patrick liked from my first collection, which was called This Is the Band, and is available from Hearing Eye. So this, I really wrote this poem a long time ago, and it was when I spent a time living in London and I moved, and in my new job, it was just a long time ago. There was a cleaner who probably didn't have the correct papers, and it was before there was sort of quite a lot of fuss about that kind of thing. And our manager was very sympathetic towards her, but it was kind of patronising in a way, I think, because he was lovely. I think it was about the whole team's attitude. She worked really long hours. But I just remember this building it was actually two houses linked together, and in the old part that was rarely used, but this lady used to go in and clean it, there was a little statuette of a Buddha, and the manager used to put a banana on there every day for her. Anyway, this poem is kind of about the ambiguities of the relationship, but it's also in honour of her, because she was an absolutely fantastic woman, and she's probably teaching in a university by now if she realised her ambitions. Isabelle. Isabelle is invisible. The skill of her job is to be discreet as she cleans. She sweeps the stairs with a hand brush because the Hoover lead would trip us up and the noise disturb us. Isabelle is invisible. She leaves a trail of cleanliness after us. She changes light bulbs and toilet rolls and washes our coffee cups, even though that is not her job. She is closer than our shadows with her footfall, soft as tissue, invisible. Don't get me wrong, we do value her. We always say hello and greet her with enthusiasm, but sometimes we give ourselves away by greeting with enthusiasm 2 or 3 times in the same day. Isabelle is invisible, except for that red letter day when she got to leave to stay permanently in this country. We celebrated with cards and cake. We were going to get champagne, but we didn't collect enough. But still, we made quite a fuss. Later, Isabelle said to me, I know I should feel happy, but I just feel numb. I waited 9 years for this permit. It should have been 9 months. If the waiting was a child, she said, that child would be nearly grown by now. Her life has become grotesque in this hellhole of a waiting game this country's made her play. She lost her husband to politics and her son to alcohol. She used to have a life and chosen purpose. Now she bags our rubbish for us. These days I gather up my shame before Isabelle gets to work around my desk. Today we had training on diversity. A good idea, but it was done in such a clumsy way. We were asked to write upon the board all the words the gutter press used to stereotype refugees. I refused, was too angry to speak. Isabelle is invisible. Please tidy up before you leave. Isabelle is invisible. Please wipe that board clean before she sees. So thanks for listening so far. I have got a new book which is called Spirograph, which is published by Burning Eye. It's published a year ago nearly, obviously during the lockdown. I want to read you one or two poems from it. This one is it's a little bit about how words changed, the impact of words and symbols changed during the lockdown. It's also a love song to the woman the older woman in the poem. It's partly about Jamie Barton, who is an opera singer. Okay. Pride. Mary says she didn't know what a rainbow flag was until a woman with a glorious voice raised one at the Albert Hall. She said she was just a fat queer from Kansas, Mary says, with love and wonder in her voice. Like all of Mary's conversations, this is repeated a lot, like turns of a hamster wheel, over and over. She couples it with the comments that made her feel sick, comments of bias by appalled, outraged and offended, who hated the way jingoism at the prom was tempered by music titled Woke and For Democracy. Hated most that tiny smiling woman who enunciated every syllable and opened her scarlet mouth to let her voice out on wings. Mary says she knows what Blake meant when he wrote Jerusalem, that it isn't for the Union Jacks and the Brexiteers. She calls him William Morris by mistake, but she's utterly sincere. Repeats herself so much, can hardly get out of her sitting room, where not a lot happens except on TV. Mary's granddaughter thinks she repeats her stories because they are telling something that she can't directly say. A memory of when news was whispered adult conversations, valve radios broadcasting sonorous voices, rumours of Kristallnacht and jackboots, gas masks, blackout curtains, screeching sirens, spitfires crossing miles of sky. As leaves fall from the trees, Mary watches the prom with her granddaughter. A vase of gladioli comes into bloom like lipstick flowers. And Jamie Barton hits that high note somewhere over the rainbow. And the last poem is the title of this book, Spirograph. A child unwraps her present on birthday morning. Plastic filters in neon and rose like vintage aviator glasses. Inserts her pen, starts patterns of not quite repetition, explores from neatness, explores distortion. My friend says spirograph, but he means spirometry, the measurement of breath in lungs that are losing function. Saturn's hard return takes 30 years. Our bodies replenish in 7. I'm moving out of Reminiscence Row as the wheel of change becomes a spiral. Thanks very much for listening. Thank you, Patrick. See you at Dodo in real life.